Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hezron Ricketts. I'm a planning manager at HS2. I put these slides together, and it's quite good to see some of the stuff that's been said already today, which actually fits really well with what I've written down and I'm going to say to you today. So it saves a bit of explaining to do, really. So before we start, obviously, I've got the graveyard shift. It's just before lunch, so I'm going to get a bit of interaction between all of you. If you can choose whichever colour card you want, and have any of you in the room ever gone more than 1 month without an accepted programme, just hold it up and keep it up there. It should be all of you, I expect. Yeah, any colour. Yeah, let's make it a bit more interesting. So, all about 3 months then? Yeah, still there. Okay, good. 6. Oh, still there. 12. 18 months? Yeah. It's about, I mean, if you all put it down after 1 month, then I should have just packed up and left, because all of this is a bit pointless. You obviously know how to get programs across the line. But why were they not accepted? And John mentioned the 4 reasons in his presentation. I personally think that actually that's a bit of a fail. I know I've seen programs and accepted programs. I've had programs accepted that inevitably will fall down on one of these all the time. There's always a reason that you can knock somebody's program back. You know, even if it's just one activity out of 1,000, there's a chance you could go back and say, oh, it's not accepted. This set of guidelines are there actually to make sure we've got all of the right information in. And as John mentioned, he sees a lot of plans that don't have it in. I think what we do need to do to get programs accepted is actually work with each other to get the right information into the program at the right time, and develop the program in a rolling wave, really, to get the information that we can and do know at the time in. So we do know that almost all plans are not perfect. It's an estimate, right? It's what we know now. It's going to change. It's just a fact. The stats prove it. That's what happens across the board. A bit more about the reasons as to why we don't accept programs, and just going in, but we've already spoken about that, and I can skirt over that, and we're before lunch, so I'll push on. Most of your plans that were accepted weren't because they complied with all of these rules 100%. It was probably because everybody kind of had a bit of confidence around the plan that it was achievable, that you had the right people there to deliver it, and that the timescales were correct. There had to be that air of confidence around the plan that you were going to be able to make it, and that it got everything that everybody needed out of the contract, both sides of the fence as well. Some of the things that I think help to get this confidence, and obviously collaboration, Stuart mentioned earlier, and a bit about what Bob said in terms of behaviours, but I'll touch on that a bit further into the presentation. But obviously regular programme review meetings, and that happening prior to the programme being submitted. How often do we have them after the programme's been submitted? It's already too late to get anything done. A rejection, or not rejection, non-acceptance goes out, and then we have to resubmit the programme. Get it done beforehand, iron out the issues, and hopefully that should sort things out. A well-written narrative of changes and the issues with the programme. We might not have the perfect programme. There may be issues in the programme, areas for development. If we're upfront about these things, our client usually is going to be a bit more accepting in what the programme actually says. And lastly, comprehensive feedback from the acceptance and non-acceptance notification. How often do we get rejected because it didn't comply with works information? Nothing else. No list of bullet points as to why. Where can I do things to make the programme better? If we don't do all of these things here, we'll just get into the tennis of programmes going backwards and forwards and never really pushing on. A bit about what Bob was talking about earlier, and behaviours actually. Firstly, I think you need to have the right environment for the right behaviours to come out. And we didn't talk about this before, by the way. It's just happened. So having the right stakeholders around the table when you're having a progress meeting. How often do we have groups of planners sat together saying, oh yeah, agree, disagree, goes to the PM a couple of days later, I'm not accepting this is rubbish, The right people need to be in the meeting, the ones that can affect change or accept the program. If you haven't got those people around the table, or the subject matter experts, your engineers, designers, consent teams, if they can't have a look at the program and say yes or no, ultimately you're not using the tool properly. Early on in our contracts, I think we need to make more of an effort to define what an acceptable program is, a program narrative is, and the level of detail that we want in it. When we start programs or projects, we usually have that magical 28-day or 90-day mobilization period where we're expected to go from 0 to 100 and be operating at full capacity straight away. That isn't what ever happens usually. Our teams take time to build. We need to build relationships between our teams, and we don't necessarily have the full capability for planning, cost management, project management from day 1 or 28 or 90. So if we know what the capabilities are, let's roll out what we think the program is and what we expect to see from it over time. So that first program might not have everything in there going up to the completion date. We might have a bit of a rolling wave, high-level bars going out at the back end of the plan, but our first 6 months might be spot on. We do expect to accept a program after the first one, so it doesn't have to be that. And NEC obviously gives us the chance to move on into the next period. I mentioned it about the not acceptance coming in from the plan, a bit like an MOT advisory. You might accept a program, but there are areas where you think that things need to improve, or you don't expect to see early warnings put in such a way that they impact the works. And that really needs to come back with all programs, I think, in order to push on. And sharing the program at a high frequency, once a month, once every 6 months, as John said, I don't think is enough. If I'm working on client side, I expect to be able to go and look at the program almost every day and see where the development is, see what if programs have been produced, assess those, give me a chance to assess those with enough time and go and speak to the right people, get into people's diaries, speak to engineers, and get the acceptance. I'm more confident of accepting a program if I've had more time to look at it, or at least have some sort of say in what the what if program is. So at HS2, and I think on a lot of our larger programs, we want to work in a shared planning environment. There are obviously some potential legal issues around who's at fault for delay, and if there are outages in your database, who hosts a database, who's at fault for that. If the database is out for a week, is that an instant compensation event that goes to contractor, blah, 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 blah. I don't care about that, to be honest with you. There are a lot of issues that we have with planning, using things like P6, XER files being transferred, costs us sometimes days, sometimes weeks every month to get right. It just allows for discrepancies of information, data configurations, and baseline management as well, looking beyond just the program and the contract, and obviously picked up in one of the workshops we are having later, and value and baseline management value is essential in making sure that we've got the correct point of reference. So there are, I think, the benefits about working in a shared planning environment are things like transparency. You can look and share the program at any point, and if you had a little tap on the shoulder 2 weeks before you're going to submit your program and say, John, I've had a look, I think that your mobilisation part of the program there looks a bit rough. We should look at this, that, or the other. Or do you want to speak to, designer X down the hall? That can happen before the program goes in. Integration, multi-program environments. If we're not just working on one project, if it impacts something else, this gives us the best opportunity to do that. And a shared workload as well. If you've got one person that looks after the PMO side, looking after your systems, looking after codes and calendars and stuff like that, you don't have to do it twice. You don't have to worry about discrepancy between the two databases. Behaviours. I think it's in the interest of all parties on any program or project that there's a high rate of program acceptance throughout the life cycle of the program or project. John's mentioned about entitlement, about delay analysis, extension of time, stuff like that. Now, John did mention that the program was a commercial tool, and I think hammer was used, and also the word force somebody to do something. it is a commercial tool, and that is absolutely true, but it shouldn't be used as a weapon as far as acceptance anyway, shouldn't be used as a weapon. Lightsaber, obviously, it's a dark side lightsaber being red, but really accepting a program doesn't mean you've accepted a compensation event, and a lot of people still believe that. And accepting the program doesn't mean you've accepted delay to the completion date either. It's just a representation of what the works is there. All those two things have to come through a separate notification under the contract that are nothing to do with program acceptance. Also, ownership. It's the planner's plan. No, it's not. It's everybody's plan. If it's your activity, you are supposed to be managing what the forecast is, what your actual is for all of those activities. You should be dealing with your planner or planners on a daily basis. If you've got activities that are on the plan, if you're working on something that's not on the plan, I've heard a lot of program directors say, if it's not on the plan, you're doing it, you need to come and speak to me because you shouldn't be here. What are you doing? So I talked a little bit about this earlier. So change happens. Programs are going to change. If we get our first program accepted, hunky dory, it's great. But change happens. So we're going to have to amend the program as we go on. We're never perfect in that. Change happens for many reasons as well. The program isn't where we decide who or why things change. The only way, I think, to assess change on any contract really is with a regularly accepted program. We can go 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. If we go that long without an accepted program, change is almost impossible to go back and work out correctly. And that's on both sides of the fence where the enticement is. Also reporting as well. If we haven't got an accepted program, how do we sit in a progress report meeting and say this should be this or that with a program that's 6 months out of date? For me, agreeing where we went wrong helps us to learn the mistakes. And what we don't do in controls particularly very well is collect historical data about things like, what was our program acceptance percentage? Why was it that way? We don't share that with our next project or program. A lot of things we could learn from other industries, I think, on improving us in general, we need to sort of look at. And things to consider, really. Creating an understanding between parties early on. So sit down and have the conversation. Don't just fire the first program across. I think that's key, really. What does it really mean when you've got that paragraph in the works information that says you want to see KPIs for X, Y, or Z on the program? What do you want to see from that? So sitting down and talking, having the chat and relationship with people, I think is key. Well, it has been key in me getting programs accepted. Programs I know that could actually do with improvement as well. Where possible, obviously plan in the same environment. Talked about shared environments using things like P6, and be transparent about issues with the plan. Early warnings, we come to things like that. We have to get issues out on the table as early as possible and get our brightest minds, smartest people. And obviously, we talked about behaviours earlier and women being in the industry. I think that people from all different backgrounds should be encouraged into construction and into project management, program controls, because we obviously all come from similar types of backgrounds, but you bring new people in that have not experienced that type of thing and they've just got a fresh outlook, and sometimes that's the best way to solve the problem. So sharing these issues is sometimes the best way to get them solved if possible. Talked about this already, but lessons learned and getting program acceptance and why or why it wasn't accepted into our data, and sharing that with our peers as well, maybe through the LinkedIn page, things like that could be published on there. There are loads of other things I'd like to talk about as well in terms of program, baseline versus accepted program with the NEC and bringing added value into that, reporting cycles and stuff like that, accrued actual progress, all fun stuff, but it's lunchtime now, so maybe later. Thank you very much. Cheers.